Chess gambits, I am sure you're aware, are absolutely everywhere. I think in this age of online content creation and there being so many free resources available, a huge percentage of them are dedicated to those that diehard, you know, percentage of the chess population that are absolute gambiteers at heart, and they're always looking for the latest and greatest gambit to throw our way. So the idea with this video series is to be prepared for those players, and so we're going to take a variety of different popular gambits, and we're going to explore what are good solutions against them to hopefully improve our scores against them. The first gambit on the hit list is the Danish Gambit. It's a pretty scary gambit actually, and I'm going to show what it looks like. After e4, e5, white goes d4, not bothering to develop the knight as is most typical, just going straight for the kill in the center. And the idea is that after pawn takes d4, white isn't going to waste time with their queen capturing here on d4, but rather offer up a pawn, hence the term Danish, the name Danish Gambit. Well, okay, so after c3, now black, typically what they do is they just capture the pawn and they accept the gambit. And here there is a fork in the road for white. The most natural looking move, knight takes c3, is in fact only the second most popular move. Because more often than not, what white does is go bishop to c4 to sort of go full berserk here on the position and offer up a second pawn. But if you capture it after bishop takes b2, well, enjoy the ride, right? Because as black, we have no development, so many open lines, and it's one of the scariest positions that you can get only a few moves into the game. So this is one of the paths. And the other path that can happen is simply, as I said, knight takes c3, and just play a little bit more calm of a position, something a bit closer to something like a Smith-Morra gambit, but in my opinion, stronger than the Smith-Morra, because there's something about these open lines that make it, for me, very, very easy to go wrong in this position. And just to show you how easy it is, the most popular path that the black players take here is they go knight c6, bishop comes out to c4, knight f6, knight comes out to f3, and now by far the most common move I saw in the online database is bishop to b4. And this is immediately a sign to not play like this, because what happens here is they go e5, and after knight e4, this is most common move by far, knight e4, black is counting on the fact that the knight cannot be touched because of this pin and putting pressure on c3, so it looks like a natural move. But after the hammer blow queen d5, it's game over immediately for black. And as I say, thousands of games have ended up like this. The reason it's game over is because this is a threat of checkmate, and the knight is falling, and you can't stop both threats at once. So that's that. And so you can see that in this position, whether it's bishop to c4 and this double pawn gambit, or just knight takes c3 and easy development of the pieces, there's a lot of venom in either case. And I thought to myself, can we just maybe not deal with any of this? And the good news is that we can absolutely avoid all of this, and not only avoid it, but avoid it by playing what I think is objectively the strongest move in this position. So the recommendation for how to beat the Danish Gambit is the following move, queen to e7. And I wasn't aware of this move before I started researching the video, so I'm actually happy that I researched it, because I do play e4, e5, and I had always accepted the gambit, and I always found it a bit unpleasant, but queen e7 turns out to be a fantastic move, because now we really flip the tables on our opponent, and we say, you don't get your like normal gambit stuff here where you have easy development, huge initiative, but now we're targeting this pawn on e4. And what I noticed is most of the time the white player goes wrong. The most common move that white plays is bishop to d3. This is already a very bad move, and it allows us to follow up with pawn to d5. We target the pawn on e4. Now white likes to protect and break the pin on the king by playing queen e2. Now we just take, bishop takes, to keep the queens on the board, but after knight f6, they're in trouble. This bishop is hit, so they have to move it, and now easy development, bishop to g4, nasty pin, And yeah, the position is horrific. For example, white can do something like queen takes queen, bishop takes, knight takes to get back their pawn. But you get a position like this, and now we can even castle queenside, and it's a beautiful position for black, right? We have equal material, but this pawn is on the verge of collapse. We have the king that is still in the center of the board. We have beautifully placed pieces. I mean, this bishop can go to b4, this rook can come to e8. This bishop is pinned, so we might even, in some cases, be able to put pressure on the pawn via c5. So this position is horrific for white, and yet it's one of the most common ways in which the game unfolds against this queen e7 move. So, but what else? What else if they don't play this move, bishop to d3? What else can they do? Well, the next most popular way of playing, I believe, is queen takes d4, which again makes sense, right? The white player is a bit rattled, doesn't really know what to do against this rare queen e7, and queen takes d4 is tempting, right? Defend the pawn and get back your pawn at the same time. But the problem with this is knight c6. We hit the queen with tempo. Knight f6. We hit the pawn on e4 with tempo. Bishop d3 to defend, and d5. Again, the same plan, knight c6, knight f6, d5. We can see it in a couple of different shapes and forms. And the problem is this pawn is under so much pressure. Most players just take, knight takes, queen takes, bishop takes, and you get a position like this. And this is actually, again, much better for black. Not as good maybe as the first variation, but pretty damn good, because the problem is we have, for white, the problem rather, is we have 3 pieces developed against only 1. And the other more subtle problem is that white has this weak d3 square. And that's actually not so trivial. For example, let's say that white continues to develop. We go bishop to g4. We target this knight. Suddenly white isn't sure of what to do, because maybe they want to defend the knight with the bishop to stop us from damaging their pawns. But they may not want to go back with pieces. If they put their bishop on e4, targeting our knight, maybe we castle queenside, and then we play f5, and they may not want to, or knight f6, they may not want to part ways with their light squared bishop. So suddenly, backward move, dangerous square for the bishop, maybe they go knight d2. But now, knight that lets go of the control of the f4 square, targets the bishop and the pawn. So white has to do something like bishop f1. Now we can even castle queenside, and we can see we're about to jump into d3, forcing them to give up that bishop that they wanted to keep. We've got rook over to e8. This is just one sample line, of course, but it shows the kind of danger of that white position there, a little bit soft in terms of central control. Okay, so that is also not a very good variation for white. And now at this point, what we've looked at is we've looked at bishop d3 and at queen takes d4, both of which allow us to get a much better position straight off the bat. So what can white do? I mean, it's not like white is just going to straight up resign here. Probably the best move, the most challenging, is pawn takes d4. Now, the good news is that's hard for most white players to play because they don't want to give up this pawn on e4 with a check. But the reason why this is probably the strongest move is that after bishop e3, our best bet is to just develop quickly with a check, knight c3, and to again develop quickly with this knight, whether f6 or e7 shouldn't matter, because the knight, as we're about to see, will jump to d5. And now white has to be careful because they cannot just develop with bishop to d3 because the pawn on g2 is falling. So they go knight f3 to cover that square. And the white idea is, hey, you know, you did grab a pawn, but your queen is hit here. Your queen is vulnerable. So we're going to go bishop d3 with a bit of time. We're going to maybe castle. And where exactly is your queen going to go, right? Like, you can imagine, for example, let's say we castle bishop d3. Suddenly you put your queen, let's say, I don't know, where can you go? Here, here are 2 natural squares. Well, guess what? After queen here, I can even take you. Because if king takes, will be met by knight g5. And you might say, okay, well, why not queen here? Well, I can also take you. Because if king takes, again, knight g5. So this is an example of how quickly black can get into trouble against this way of playing from white. And that's why our strong idea, is to put our knight on d5. Now, the point is, when white deals with the double threat here, by playing queen d2, We now take this bishop, and after pawn takes, now we drop the queen back. And by taking here, not only did we win the bishop here, but our queen is now much safer on the e file because it's shut down, and there's no nasty bishop d3, knight g5 stuff. The drawback though to playing like this is that white has a strong pawn center, and the one thing we want to avoid is for white to steamroll us in the center, maybe put their king here. That'll mean that their rook will be on f1 on the semi-open file, and you can see, hey, our position is not looking so hot here on the queen side. So we do have some problems to solve, and I'll show you how you solve those. After bishop d3, we go d5, and we grab the center, and this is our plan. We're going to put our knight over here to grip that center, and at the same time, with our knight on f6, we help to defend against, a potential kingside attack, bringing some reinforcements to the king side. So we go knight d7. Now, just a very quick note, probably the best move is rook e1, but in case you ever get this position on the board, I just want to show white can technically capture this pawn on d5, targeting the queen, targeting the bishop, but after we take their queen, they take ours, we take here, we're up a piece. The reason why white can play this is that they have rook e1. But it's not a very dangerous line because we just move the king away and then we continue our natural development. The dust has more or less settled, and as you can see, we're up a pawn. And the king being in the center is not a problem because they have no queens, they have no dark squared bishop, they only have one knight. So our king in the center, as we move closer towards an endgame, is actually a plus rather than a minus. So that position is okay. Let me show you what is the most scary way that white can play, and that is rook e1 with the idea of playing e4 while our king and queen are still here stuck on the e file. So we go knight f6, and now they play e4 anyway. If they don't, then sooner or later, we have this bind, we might even chop off this knight, and we're safe. As long as they can never play e4 and steamroll us, we're safe. So e4 immediately, we take, they take, we take, they take. Be careful, of course, about taking this way because we'll win their queen. So they take this way. And now just one little detail. Do not take the rook trying to be clever, saying queen takes rook, knight takes rook, bishop takes queen. The reason why is if we take here, they have this rook e1 move. And although we get two rooks for our queen, the big problem is that after this, our king is in the center of the board. If our king was castled, this would be good. Two rooks, we were already up a pawn. Life is good. We have the bishop here, lots of good things. But it turns out here, we just don't have a good way to solve the problem of our king being in the center of the board. Because if we go bishop e6, there's d5. If we go bishop e7, there's knight d5. And otherwise, we have to move the king. And then we have no coordination. So avoid that one trick. And instead, just block. And the one thing that you need to be sure of here is that you're not about to lose a piece with d5. So that's really the main risk of the position if you're not aware. But here's the point. We have the move queenside castle. And then after pawn takes, the queen is lost. And you're also going to have queen c5 check, where you may pick up this pawn, right? So you'll move your queen out of the attack and put pressure on d5, which is fantastic. The absolute best, I will show you, the absolute best that white has here is to go queen f2, bishop c5, rook e3, and we get this kind of position. You don't really need to study it, but I will just show you what is very quickly the endgame. This is the endgame that that you can get, or this simplified middle game. You've got two pawns and a rook for the two knights, and that's actually much better on this kind of open board where the rook is very, very powerful and coordinates very well with the queen. So this is a better position for black, much better in fact. So yeah, and it's the best that white has if they choose to try and grab your bishop with the move d5. So yeah, and if they don't do that, well, what can they do? Maybe a3 is, I think, what the computer was pointing at as the best move. But after we just take, and we shut down all the d5 ideas with c6, the game is much better for us because we're up a pawn. Soon we should be able to play a move like castle, and yeah, overall we're pretty happy here. White is still a little bit in the game, let's say. I mean, it's not like a resignable position or anything, but we're up a pawn, and mostly that's a clean pawn. So that has been the analysis of the Danish Gambit. Now, I've been a little bit maybe too thorough in terms of delving into this variation with, let me just go back, delving into this variation here with the move pawn takes d4. But I want to just remind that that is, like, the reason I've delved mostly into that is because it's the most challenging variation that white can play, but it's not the most popular. So most of the time when you play queen e7, be prepared to get a very easy game against moves like bishop to d3 or queen takes d4. Those are the ones that are going to get the most commonly, but I spent more time on c takes d4 because of this kind of chess habit that you want to focus on the challenging variations, right, and coast along on the rest. But it's good to remember that one of the most powerful advantages of this queen e7 variation is, number one, it's rare, and number two, when it happens, most of the time, the white player goes down the paths of less resistance, let's say, right? Goes down the not so good paths, and we get a great game. In fact, black has actually been scoring well over 50% wins in this variation. I think something like 58% wins for black from this position. So happy hunting in this line, and hopefully, if the Danish Gambit has been bad to you over the last over your chess career, hopefully you'll do better with this line. Do let me know how it goes. Also, if you like this series, drop a like, always helps me. And finally, if there are some particular gambits that have been bothering you, feel free to drop a comment down below, and I'm happy to cover different gambits over the course of the remaining videos. So I will see you in the next one, and good luck.